Hey up everybody, welcome back to the Audio Cycling YouTube channel, where today we're going to be taking a look at the Velogames Tour of Britain, my home tour, and maybe I can provide some insight on some of the more local riders. That definitely has helped people in years gone by, with the likes of Jacob Scott and Bob Donaldson last year. Funnily enough, you can see him there. He is kind of in my team, but I'll reveal my team at the end. Let's talk about some of the more expensive riders, including Remco Evenepoel at 28 credits. Obviously, you can see over here, like George's tweet even, will you go with Remco at 28 credits? Obviously, he's sort of calculated his price to try and put us off, or really put us in a tricky situation of going with Remco and without Remco kind of camps. For me, Remco Evenepoel, to be worth it, is going to need to score about 800 points, which isn't out of the question, let's say. It's very possible, I think, that he could solo to victory on the first three stages, or maybe the first one isn't that suited towards a solo attacker, but there is that final climb before Kelso, which he could go solo on. It's like 3k at 6%, and generally, just given the quality of the field, I don't think that anybody is really on Evenepoel's level. If he decided to try and go solo, I don't honestly think that there's really that many teams which have the strength here to try and bring him back. Maybe the Ineos Grenadiers do. Bahrain Victorious might do as well, but personally I just think that when Remco gets in his TT kind of solo effort, he's a pretty hard man to bring back. Even if he doesn't win the first stage, I think stages 2 and 3 are definitely more suited to him, especially about stage 2, which goes around Saltburn. That was where the national champs were this year, in case you were wondering. And I can tell you there is a steep climb in Saltburn, which has got like 20% for 500 metres. Something like that. It's really steep. Perfect place for Remco to launch. So if Remco were to win, say, 2 stages, stages 2 and 3, he'd get 300 points. If he wins overall, he gets another 300, so that's 600, plus the daily points, he gets up to 700 odd. KOM points, stuff like that. You know, it's very possible that I think Remco could get 800. So personally, I think that he is worth it, because the alternative strategy of going really sprinter heavy, I don't think really adds up too much. And let's face it, you'll probably have a far better viewing time if you have Evenepoel on your team. You'll just feel a lot more comfortable. A bit like those people who chose Wout van Aert in their Velogames Spain teams, which I didn't do. Pidcock is the other expensive rider. I personally think that you may as well try and save 6 credits to try to get Evenepoel, because Pidcock, let's face it, recently he didn't do that great in Britannia Classic. Ever since like the Olympic road race, I haven't really seen too much of what he's kind of doing, although he is doing mountain bike at the moment, of which he's won neither of them, which isn't that indicative of fantastic form in my opinion. Saying that, Pidcock does usually get involved a lot in the Tour of Britain. Look back at the past 2 years that he's competed. He's always sprinting for just like random top 10s, although they do have Hayter here, so I'm not sure how that would work out this year, but those first 3 stages are very suited towards Pidcock, and he is going to be that guy for GC, I expect. But Hayter could certainly have something to say about that. I'm not sure which way round they'd go, but for me, I just think Pidcock's got a bit too many question marks with that kind of mountain biking form, and you know, how is he going into this race with that mountain biking in his legs? Is he going to be a little bit fatigued? I don't really know. Mohoric isn't actually on the start list anymore. He is out. He's been removed for Vlad something or other. I'm sorry, I can't remember his name, but I know his first name's Vlad, and he's in the Bahrain team for this race. Alaphilippe, for me, I think Alaphilippe is in the unfortunate situation where Evenepoel is the more likely one to go soloing off, and Magnier is faster in a sprint, which I think puts Alaphilippe in a very strange middle ground where he won't do that great, because if you've got a kind of GC day, it'll be for Evenepoel, and if you've got a sprinter day, it'll be for Magnier, who did just finish second place at the Britannia Classic, which was no joke. So I think that Alaphilippe I've got, again, a bit of a question mark over, but I'd say that he's better than Bilbao, because Bilbao I just don't think this terrain massively suits. I would honestly pick Zambanini over Bilbao, and he's 10 credits cheaper, so that's just my take on that. Alaphilippe's a bit better than Bilbao, like I said. Ethan Hayter, I think he's a good pick for this race. He's done very well in this race in the past, but it's him and Pidcock. I'm not sure how that dynamic's going to work out. Hayter hasn't been that great this year. He wasn't that brilliant in the Olympics. But in theory, he is the fastest sprinter that Ineos have, and at their home race, they really need to be trying to get something, because at the moment, Ineos Grenadiers are just floundering all over the shop. So they really need a good Tour of Britain to really kind of steady the ship, in my opinion. So Hayter, I think, is a pretty safe choice. Magnier, to be honest with you, he was probably the first one on my team after that Britannia Classic performance. I think this guy's getting pretty much like a top 5 in every sprint. Soudal Quickstep have got Evenepoel in the lead-out train, and he's pretty much worth at least 1.5 men. So I think that Magnier's got a pretty good shot of getting lots of points in this race. And Soudal Quickstep, if Evenepoel wins GC, will probably be up there in the team classification as well. So Magnier gets that little bonus as well. You got a lot of strong 14 credit riders. You got Onley, of course. He is starting in the race starts in Kelso, which is his hometown. I just don't think this race is too suited towards Onley. Really needs more uphill finishes. I think a stage 3 will be good for him. Stage 2, if he can manage to hang on to Evenepoel, will be good for him. But there's 14 credits for a guy who's, he's got a little bit expensive, and I would rather go with the safety of Magnier for the sprints, or Van Uden or Vernon, because I think that these guys will be competing for the minor places on stage 1. And they'll be picking up points in stages 4, 5 and 6. And when you compare that to the GC options, I'm just not too sure if the GC guys are going to be as worth it as the sprinters. Saying that, I think Onley's good because he is like the only GC option that DSM have, whereas someone like Israel Premier Tech have Stephen Williams and Joseph Blackmore. So I don't know which one of those they're going to be going with. But Onley, in theory, because it starts in Kelso, he's going to want to do well. So Onley will be a top 10. I just think that he'll probably end up scoring about 300 to 350 points, whereas Van Uden could sneak up towards 400, in my opinion, or any of the other sprinters like Vernon. Vernon's good. Him and Casper Van Uden, if you go with both of them, you got some of the fastest sprinters in the race. If you have Magnier, Vernon and Van Uden, you will be winning quite a few sprints. I can almost guarantee that. Williams and Blackmore, as I mentioned just a little bit ago, you could go with either of them, to be honest. I'd say Blackmore just because he won the Tour de l'Avenir and he was looking so strong there. I would rather go with him than Williams. But it could be either of them. To be honest, I just don't know which one it's going to be. But for me, because Blackmore's a little bit cheaper, I would give him the slight edge. And given that I've seen his racing more recently than Williams, who I just have no idea where he's going to go in this race. But in theory, Israel Premier Tech should be up there in GC with one of them. It's just sort of up to you to decide which one it's going to be. Wout Poels will be a domestique, I expect, and I think Jake Stewart is just a lead-out man. Abrahamson, you can almost guarantee this guy's going to be pinging it off the front. And if there is going to be a guy who's going to win solo who isn't Remco Evenepoel, it's going to be Abrahamson for sure. And Castroviejo, Clark, Donovan, Howson and Schultz and Stites, I wouldn't really be picking any of these other than Govakar, because I think that he is the sprinter for Bahrain. He was looking good in the Deutschland Tour, and therefore he's going to be picking up, at least 3 or 4 top 10s, whereas I just think that these other guys are semi-GC contenders and don't have as much certainty about them as Govakar does. Into the 8 credit riders, you've got quite a lot to be going at. Matthew Brennan isn't in this anymore, actually. The GB announced their squad like an hour ago. He was in my team. He looks pretty good, but hey-ho, that is the way it is. I like Robert Donaldson for this. Recently announced for Jacob Alula next year. I think that he's a good choice. Trinity seem to rally around him for the sprints. He's not like an out-and-out sprinter. He's more of like a classic-style sprinter. He's a classics man with like a fast finish, is how I describe him. But he can get over some lumps and bumps, and I think that he will be a good choice for your teams. Odd Christian Eiking could be their GC option, I would guess, other than Abrahamson possibly. Sean Flynn, they've got Oscar Onley here, but Sean Flynn looked good in the Tour of Denmark, so I quite like him as a choice. Matt Holmes is in the Team GB squad. He's been looking good on the domestic scene. He won the Lincoln Grand Prix earlier this year, and he just finished second at the Rydale Grand Prix, which are 2 of like the bigger national level events for those people outside the UK. And to be honest with you, all the other 8s I don't really like that much. Maybe Rory Townsend, they might sprint with him, but there's somebody else on Q36.5 who hasn't been added just yet. I can't even remember his name, but he might be their sprinter instead, so just watch out for that. 6 credit riders. There's quite a lot which I like the look of. Fergus Browning won a stage of a Tour of Alsace, I want to say, from a breakaway. He's a very strong rouleur by the looks of things. Under 23 Aussie champ as well. Tom Donenworth, who is actually French, which is, again, quite hilarious. But he has been looking so good in the last, Tour d'Alsace, the Britannia, not the Britannia Classic, but there's like a Tour of Britannia. He's actually been in really good form, and I wouldn't be surprised if he was top 10 in GC. You got Joshua Goliker, a great climber for the Groupama FDJ under 23 team. But honestly, I would be picking Noah Hobbs. He is a great sprinter, and probably one of the best fastest under 23 sprinters, I would say. And I would think that you should be putting him on your team. He should be picking up quite a few top 10s in those sprints, I think. Houligaard is actually a pretty decent climber for quite a big man, so I reckon he will be a top 15 in GC as well. You got Isidore. They might sprint with him, or they might sprint with Rasmus Pedersen. But we'll get onto him in just a second. So I think Isidore, he's more like a puncher, whereas Pedersen is more like an out-and-out sprinter. So maybe Isidore gets his opportunities in those first 3 stages, and then Pedersen gets the last 3 stages. Samuel Leroux, remember he won a stage of the Etoile de Bessèges earlier this year. And from a breakaway, he won ahead of Stefan Bissiger. I think it was on like stage 3 or stage 4. So Leroux could certainly be up there in GC. But then you got, I don't know, Pim Ronhaar might sprint for Lidl Trek. I guess they announced their team. I think that he is probably going to be the fastest guy on their team. You got Jacob Scott, who will probably go in the breakaway without fail. So that's a nice safe one. And then you got Rasmus Pedersen, as I said. He is actually the Danish champion, so nice and easy to identify. And I think that if you got a team who's got the Danish champion, like, you're probably going to sprint with him, because it's just better like publicity. It's easier to see him for sure. And then you got Zambanini, who I'm kind of surprised is 6 credits after doing such a great job at the Tour de Pologne, where he was top 10 GC and up there on multiple stages, and he was good in Britannia Classic. So I think that Zambanini is a good shout for the top 10, and I think at 6 credits that's a really good pickup. And then into the 4 credit riders, where I'm looking at, honestly, Rowan Baker for St. Piran. He won a race with a name so long. It was like the East Cleveland whatever road race powered by Redcar and some other counties. Rowan Baker won the road race earlier this year, which went around the National Champs course, which is the course which is on stage 2. So therefore he knows how to race that circuit. So I say that he's pretty good. Alex Belden, he's a local lad to me near Leeds, so Belden, I'll give him a shout out. Why not? But yeah, other than them, Joe Pidcock, obviously you all know his brother. Joe Pidcock actually won a stage of the Tour of Alsace, I think it was, earlier this year, ahead of guys like Jarno Vidar, who is obviously such a sensational talent. So I think that Joe Pidcock maybe could be decent. I expect Trinity to get him a break, because there's no way that Donaldson's going to be able to compete in all the stages, so they'll have to get him a break. Callum Thornley is a very good time trialist, and I think that he might be their guy to get him a breakaway. Then you got the 2 other decathlon guys. I'd say that Kilian Verschuren is a slightly better pick than Weistelhofer, just because he's had some slightly better results this year. You could go with Ben Wiggins as well, obviously son of Bradley Wiggins. We're all very aware of who he is. But yeah, I would probably say, if you're looking at 4 credit guys, I'd say Rowan Baker, honestly, I just quite like, just because I think that he will be I just think he'll be very animating in this race. Seb Kiffin finished 6th in GC last year for St. Piran, and they say they're going to try to do better with him, so whatever. I would go with Rowan Baker or one of the St. Piran guys or one of the Trinity guys, personally. This is my team at the moment. Obviously not very complete because Brennan is still in here, but we've got Remco as pretty much our GC guy alongside Zambanini. And then the rest of the team is just sprinter. Donaldson, Magnier, Vernon, Govakar, Rasmus Pedersen and Hobbs. I might change the team around a little bit, where I might, instead of Brennan, I don't know, I might go with, let's just throw, I don't know, Roy Townsend in there. But you could also go with a scenario where you, say, want to get you know, if you didn't want to go with Remco Evenepoel, I would say you go with like Van Uden, and then you just try stack up on, you know, maybe put Blackmore in there to cover GC just a little bit, and you try and get another big sprinter in here like Hayter or something like that. Maybe you could upgrade Blackmore to Onley or something if you wanted to. I don't really know. So this might be like an anti-Remco style team, which still has some GC threat in there with Oscar Onley. So let me know what you're thinking in the comment section down below. Are you thinking with Remco or without Remco? I think I'm leaning slightly towards with Remco just because I think it's a slightly safer team, and there's less pieces which need to slot into place for things to kind of work out for you. And if Remco solos with 50Ks to go, I know that I'll be happier having him on my team than without. But yeah, let me know what you're thinking in the comment section just down below, who you're thinking of putting on your teams. And all that is left to say is to stay safe out there, and I will see you in the next video. Salut!